All right. Welcome to Struggle to Strength, Mark.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you here. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I'm Mary Beth Simone, and I am the CEO and founder of Niche Partnership Consulting. And I teach entrepreneurs and professionals how to create their contingency plan to empower their second in command to keep business and life running smoothly in an emergency. And my business was born out of a personal struggle. And with this LinkedIn Live series, my goal is to highlight the strengths that my clients and guests and collaborators have developed as a result of their struggles. So, Mark, thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
We are going to focus our conversation today on how you found strength and balance after a pandemic era job loss. So very timely conversation, I think, for the beginning of the year. So thank you for sharing this information with us.
Of course.
Before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your background and the work that you're doing now?
Sure. I think the simplest definition of what I do now, just so that people can appropriately categorize me, because we all like to categorize people based on their job, is I'm a management consultant, and I've been doing some form of consulting for the better part of my career, which spans over 30 years, which if you look at me, the math doesn't seem to work, but it will in a moment. I'll explain. And I've actually consulted with over about 350 organizations in every imaginable sector. And I joke with people that I'm kind of like a human Swiss Army knife, in that, hey, what do you need? And then it's not really a matter of specialization. Like some people have specializations like accounting or engineering. I'm not one of those people. I'm a generalist, which I think is kind of an underrated skill set. But I've done everything in the business world with the exception of surgery, litigation, and engineering a bridge. So I'm kind of an anything guy. My path, in terms of my background, it's a little bit non-traditional, actually highly non-traditional, in terms of what I've done to get to where I am today. I grew up in the family business, which was actually in multimedia, marketing, and eventually real estate. I put myself through school, and my educational career is as non-traditional as my work life. And it took me 12 years to finish my undergrad, 15 months to finish my MBA. And I was actually heading toward a PhD, but I was starting a family and thought, well, I want to focus on my family right now. So I'm going to put that on hold. But I really have made a career doing the job that no one else really wants to do. So think of the most unsavory job that you can think of, whether it's like sales or business development or something deep in business process or operations or whatever. Think of the most unsavory job, and those are the jobs that I would target. I would say, what's the job that nobody else wants to do? And then I would go and do that job. And of course, being in consulting, you find yourself in that job a lot, because a lot of times the companies and organizations outsource some of those jobs that they don't want to do to outside consultants. So I've been in that position too. But I've basically made a career doing those kind of cleanup jobs, and actually have found that there's a lot of value in sort of plugging in those gaps. So a lot of my career has been behaviorally more like an entrepreneur than an employee. So it's been a very interesting background, very interesting career. And just for your viewers and listeners, I've done a couple of very interesting things, which again, non-traditional. I spent a couple of years, because it took me so long to get myself through school. I've done some things that are not in the traditional path. I spent a couple of years singing on a cruise ship. I spent, so I'll let that sink in for a moment. That was a lot of fun in my very early adulthood. And I also spent several years in nonprofit and faith-based ministry. And talk about an education in human psychology and human behavior. It was just an amazing time of growth for myself doing that kind of work. So some of the most rewarding work that I have done, but not a whole lot of money in it. And when you're starting a family, you kind of have to provide. So I had to get a little bit realistic and moved on from that into more formalized consulting. So.
Yeah, you have a very interesting background. And the way you and I were introduced in 2021 was through Maureen Shores, who was on your podcast. And then after we talked for a little while, you invited me on your podcast. So I was on last year. And so that's why you were top of mind when it came to my lineup of guests for the Struggle to Strength show, because your background is so interesting. I knew that you would have at least one story that would be great to share with the audience. And you had several, but we did narrow it down to one. Yeah. So I'm just going to invite, if anyone is listening or with us live, feel free to let us know in the comments that you're here. Otherwise, we don't see you or anything. And if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the comments, and Mark and I will make sure that we circle back and answer the questions. And if you're watching on the replay, feel free to add a question. Let us know that you watched. And Mark and I will keep an eye on the comments and answer any questions that come up in the replay too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And having you and Maureen talk about really the end of life, and talk about, Maureen and I talked about end of life, and you and I talked about obviously contingency planning, what you specialize in. Those pair of topics is so under discussed and so needed in today's society, especially as we're staring down the barrel of a pandemic that has had a variety of impacts, including death. And I think people do really need to consider. People really do need to have a pragmatic consideration of what happens, if things really get serious in my life. So I was having you and Maureen on was one of the better decisions that I made in 2021.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the plug, and I'm sure Maureen does too.
Of course.
So now let's focus on what was happening with you. So can you take us back to February 2020, before the pandemic shut down, and share with us what was happening for you professionally at that time?
Yeah, so I'll set the stage a little bit for the rest of the story. So February 2020, I was leading a 25-person program, and we were working, and we had just learned that we had lost our contract. And we were and we had heard about this thing called coronavirus, and we weren't really sure what it was. We were still trying to figure out, it was just making its way into the United States, and we were just trying to figure out, what it is and what kind of impact it's having. And you'd hear about a few cases in New York, and there was somebody at a wedding, and the whole wedding got it. And so it was just, if we can think back that far, it feels like a bazillion years ago, but back then it was just we were very kind of unsure. What is this thing going to be? Is it going to be kind of another SARS, or is it H1N1? Is it that kind of pandemic, or is it just maybe like another flu? We weren't really sure at that time. As time progressed, we of course began to move into the shutdowns and things like that. So it was a time, we didn't know how long it was going to last. Was it going to be a couple of days, a couple of weeks, months, even years? We didn't know. So it was a time of great uncertainty.
Yeah. So how were things going professionally? You lost the contract, but in general, how were things going in the business?
Well, I think that it was, like I said, it was a time of great uncertainty. Professionally, I was doing very well, actually. I was leading a program. I was leading 25 other consultants, and I had just, I was considered a top performer in my company for several years running. And I had also spent the last few years raising people to take over for me should anything happen, of course. I think that a responsible leader does that they look at their organization or their program, whatever it is that they're leading, and they have to think in terms of what happens. This plays directly into what you talk about every single day. What happens if anything happens to me? So I was basically contingency planning for 3 years running, so or 3 or 4 years. So I had raised 3 people to take over my position should anything happen. And so it's kind of a gift, actually, when you think about it, that, to be able to tell your leadership, hey, guess what? I multiplied myself times 3. A lot of times leaders don't do that. They take over a program and they're only worried about, like, okay, how can I just do a good job here, right? And they don't think beyond, and it's not most often, it's not selfish. They just want to do a good job. Most everyone wants to do a good job, but they don't think about multiplying themselves. And responsible leaders have to think about that. They have to think about contingency, because if anything happens, then there's some kind of backup. There's someone there who could take over. So
yeah.
Professionally, I was actually doing very well at the time.
Yeah. So then we inch along to, say, the end of March 2020. And then what's happening for you in the business?
So it became a time. This is when we went into the pandemic shutdowns. There was a big, huge focus on flattening the curve. Do you remember that from 2020?
Yes.
Okay, we got to flatten the curve. That was the mantra at the time. So the prevalent thinking at the time was, we need to shut things down so that we can lessen the number of cases and, by extension, numbers of infections and death. So that's when we started heading into the shutdowns. And like I said, it was a time of great uncertainty, in that we didn't know how long this thing was going to last. Could it be 2 months? Could it be 2 years? We had no idea. So then the business had to make some very difficult decisions at that time, because we don't know how long this thing is going to last. They had to figure out, okay, so what are we going to do with this senior manager and all of these people? And letting someone go is very difficult. And I've been on both sides of that conversation. It's difficult on both sides of that conversation. And I had just been, and so the business had made the difficult decision to put everyone on my contract. Remember, we had just lost a contract, so we had to figure out, what are we going to do with all these people? And so we decided that we needed to put everyone on furlough. And what furlough means is that we were going to put people basically on the sidelines, that they were going to get some limited benefits for a time, until such time that we could find them another place to land, another contract. So I was in all of these conversations. I don't know how many of them, but many of them, where we as the leadership were talking about, putting these folks on furlough, and everyone was really great about it. They understood. And then all of a sudden, after we had completed all of these things, and mind you, I thought,
I lost your audio, Mark.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's wonderful when technology works. So we were having all these conversations with people. We were putting them on furlough, and so suddenly, I saw a calendar invite with my name on it, and I thought, I guess, and I'd had all these. I could spout the script, for all these furlough discussions, because I'd had so many of them. And I said, I guess it's my turn, and I got it. The captain goes down with the ship. So yeah, absolutely. So when we got on the call, they said, my manager, who I was very close to, she said, Mark, we're letting you go. And I thought, that was a little unexpected. I was going to be a lifer with this company, and I had some ownership stake in it, not a whole lot, but a little bit. and and I was planning to really ride out the rest of my career with this company. I saw, this company was doing real well, and so so I thought, whoa, that was unexpected. And considering all of the things that I had done for the company to build it, raising up new leadership, having really solid performance on the contract we had just let go, that we had just lost, maintaining the team, keeping the team together, keeping the team employed by the company, and not all jumping ship. That's not a small thing, right? Especially in a time of uncertainty where people are thinking, well, you know what, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Let me just leave. But people didn't leave, and I was part of that. I was part of the reasoning why they didn't leave. So anyway, so it was unexpected, and then and it taught me something, actually, Mary Beth. It's a really quick story. I was shoveling snow yesterday, and it cleared out all of it cleared the cars and cleared the driveway and the sidewalks and did all the right things. And who comes along but the township, right? The city. They come along with their plows, and they plowed me in again. And I thought, doggone it, I just cleared all this. And that was a reminder just last night that you can do all the right things and still get an outcome that you don't expect or don't want. And sometimes we don't see the wisdom of the bigger picture in the moment, but again, similar to, so just like my snow shoveling last night, I got this result that I didn't want, getting plowed in anyway, regardless of the fact that I had shoveled my way out. Same thing with the job, I did all the right things and applied internally, but they, like I said, they had to make a business decision, which was a difficult one. And so there I was, now I've just received this news, did all these things, but I've gotten this news that I wasn't expecting. And at the time, it was an undesirable event, because that has an impact on benefits. It has an impact on pay. And who knows how long this is going to last, right? We didn't know. Could it be 2 months, 2 years? And so we just didn't know. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to figure out benefits for my family. I've got to figure out what am I going to do for income in the meantime. So there were a lot of questions that had to be answered. But those kind of situations are difficult on both sides, because on the business side, they're going to let somebody go who's a top performer, who's a senior manager, to one of their competitors. Like, they do take that into account. Like, yeah, we're going to lose this guy, but and he's going to go and work for the guys that we're competing against, right? They know that, and that's difficult for them to make. And at the same time, with the financial uncertainty, they had to make the best call possible. So that's never easy. It's never easy on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, and that was such a challenging time, personally and professionally, just with all of the unknowns with the pandemic. And so, as a couple, you and your wife are probably worried about family members and
Sure.
friends who may be traveling, and then you have young children. So I'm curious, what was it like going home and explaining this to your wife and your kids?
Yeah. Well, I didn't spring it on them. That's for sure. I feel like so Ross Perot says that bad news doesn't get better with age. It's not like fine wine, right? So I gave them a heads up. I said, hey, have good news and bad news. Good news is I'm going to be around a lot more. Bad news is I just got laid off from my job. So it was definitely telegraphed, and it wasn't good news in my household. Like, I think that, it really did kind of rock our house for a time. I felt a lot of things at the time, but I felt like, all right, I need to end quickly. I need to get very, very, I need to get on board with the positive narrative of this situation, if you know what I mean. Like there are a couple of ways. There are a couple of ways to sort of dialogue this, right? And I had to unify my internal dialogue with my external dialogue, and I felt like those things had to match, and I had to really come up with a positive dialogue very quickly. And I said, and that dialogue was, if I just dig in and do the work, get focused on landing. If I just dig in, do the work, focus on getting my next engagement, whether that's employment or a new business opportunity or just another consulting engagement. If I just dig in, do the work, it's going to happen. So that's what I did, and I just simply dug in and did the work, and I had to tell myself both out loud and in my head that as long as you do the work, to land your next opportunity, you're going to land there, regardless. So believe it or not, I was actually very positive. I think there were others in my home that weren't as optimistic, given the broader environment. But I said, nope, this is, if I dig in, the opportunities will present themselves, So, and there's a saying, I can't remember who said it, but the harder I work, the luckier I get, and I really subscribe to that. The harder I work, the luckier I get, and it absolutely happened. I had probably, in the first several weeks, I probably had like 12 interviews, and with large companies, companies that you've heard of, companies that have delivered to your house, even, So
that's a lot of interviews.
I landed fairly quickly. I landed within a month. Just doing what I said. Just cultivating opportunities, putting myself out there, reaching out to my network. That I think is the most valuable thing, because that's actually what landed me my next opportunity.
Yeah, so that moved pretty quickly for you. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, hold on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was saying that moved pretty quickly for you to find a new opportunity within a month. And when you were talking about, needing to navigate maybe some opinions that other people have, I've always found that challenging, when you're trying to stay positive and upbeat about what your future is like. Other people may be more worried for you than, and that kind of influences the way that you might feel about how you're progressing forward.
Right.
But yeah, so I like that idea that you just kept, saying it out loud so that you could hear it yourself and repeating it to yourself until it became true.
Right.
And then, and then when we were preparing for the interview, you talked a bit about embracing rejection. Mm-hmm. And that is a concept that I really did not encounter until entrepreneurship. So can you talk us through, so when we were talking about it in preparation, I was like, oh, that's such an entrepreneurial approach. So can you talk us through what your approach was with embracing rejection?
Yeah. So the concept with embracing rejection. So I like to read biographies about people who have accomplished really great things. So a couple of people that I studied were Thomas Edison and Colonel Sanders. I actually developed a talk for a local university about failure and about this very concept. And so, so in terms of rejection, so Colonel Sanders, I'll use him as an example. So here's a guy who didn't become a professional chef until he was in his mid-40s. He didn't actually license his Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe until his mid-60s. and didn't become a celebrity until his 70s. So here's a guy. So and he in terms of like finding restaurants that would license his chicken recipe, he visited something like 600 plus restaurants, and he would just like go visit a restaurant and they'd say, get out of here, you're crazy, I'm not going to pay you 4 cents for every piece of chicken I sell. Like, that's just crazy. And so he visited like 600, upwards of even somewhere between 600 and 1,000 different restaurants before somebody believed in the recipe enough to buy it, to license it. So I took the same tack in terms of looking at rejection very similarly. One of the things that I think. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, you can hear me. Hang on. All right. Okay, good. So basically embracing the Colonel Sanders approach to rejection, right? Just okay, the opportunity isn't here, right? And looking at rejection, a lot of times we fear rejection, and we look at rejection as something that's really undesirable, and but yet it's the thing that teaches us lessons. It shows us how we need to improve our approach. And it shows us where opportunity is not, if you know what I mean. So with every rejection letter I would get, I would say, awesome, that the opportunity is not there. And I wouldn't even read them. They'd say, how typical rejection letters are worded, right? Thank you, but we regretfully inform you, whatever. Okay, delete, got it. So I wouldn't even read the rejections. I would just say, you know what? I'm glad that rejection happened because it's getting me, every rejection is getting me one step closer to my next opportunity. And when that, exactly right. So it's just a stepping stone. That's all it is. And that's what these rejections are. And job search, or any kind of opportunity search, or even entrepreneurial, business development, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. The more you put yourself out there, the more you expose your services, the more you expose your skills and abilities, then the higher you increase your probability. So people say, your job search should be very targeted. And I don't disagree with that. I think it should be. But the thing is, if you're sending one resume a day, your chances are probably going to be a lot lower than if you're sending 10 resumes a day, right? It's a numbers game. That's all it is. Success, and Mel Robbins says, success is a numbers game. And that's all. As an entrepreneur, job search, sales calls, whatever, it's a numbers game. So
that's a great point.
That's all it is. And I think that people should be encouraged about rejection, because the number of, you're not going to hit 100%. Never, ever, ever. It's always going to be a percentage of people who will tune in to your podcast. It'll always be a percentage of people that will actually buy. At the end of the sales funnel, people who will actually buy is actually a much smaller percentage. It's never 100%.
Right.
So
and we don't want 100% because they're not actually a good fit. Right.
Absolutely. There are people there who aren't really willing to subscribe to your approach, your method. You actually don't want 100%. So So that's how I see rejection, is that it's the ones that got filtered out essentially before I got that singular opportunity that was the right fit.
Yeah. So Mark, is there a specific strength that you feel like you added to your repertoire as a result of this experience through the pandemic?
I think that struggle, suffering, the uncomfortable things in life, they reveal who we are. They truly reveal who we are. And I think that being put in a situation that was really kind of uncomfortable, a situation where I was rejected and I had no control over it, and a difficult time. I think it revealed good things. So it revealed. So I'll answer your question succinctly and then not. It revealed my ability to cope with rejection and with struggle, and it also revealed who I was truly in that moment. And I realized that I'm actually a really positive person, even in the midst of genuine adversity. It gave me a new positive view on failure and rejection. And it also gave me the confidence to know that I can go through something difficult and come out better on the other side, and know that that difficulty is there to reveal something in me. And I think that what it did for me was that it showed me, hey, Mark, you can actually go through tough things and you're not a baby about it. Like, like you went through a layoff, and I'd never gone through a layoff in my life, and I went through a layoff, and I was able to, I got dug in, got to work, and was able to cultivate new opportunities and new contacts. And I guess relaunched or launched a podcast during that time that really took off, and like a lot of good came out of it. So so I would say what I gained from that struggle was just the knowledge and the confidence that I can go through something difficult and come out better on the other side. And I think that's true for anyone if you're paying attention. A lot of times we go through hard times, and sometimes those times are there to teach us something, but we miss the point and we end up going through the same the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great observation. And sometimes I feel like, we can develop strengths along the way, and then we have a period of time where things get a little bit easier and we forget how strong we are.
Absolutely.
And then something happens and we're like, oh yeah, I'm really okay.
And another thing that I think is really important is the value that this isn't necessarily something I learned, but I think I learned the value of it afterwards. So a lot of times, if you're a self-aware person and you're doing your sort of professional personal development, and you're journaling, or you're setting goals and you're working toward those goals, or you're reading and you're kind of working on yourself, right? That process is actually a really slow process, to see like those big changes. It's very some people talk about affirmations, right? Some people do affirmations, and I'm not, those aren't bad necessarily. But, like a lot of times we don't see the benefit of that personal professional development until those moments. And here I've been working on myself for years, decades even. And then here it is, a moment where it's a genuine struggle. It's a genuine struggle. It's a genuine hard time. And I genuinely feel like I sailed through it because of all of the internal work that I did for years, where I saw no measurable change in myself. You know what I mean?
That is a great thing to share with us, because I think that a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
And a great thing for us to keep in mind as we go through challenges, that all the work that we put in up to that point comes to bear when we go through a new challenge.
It's true. It's true. Keep doing the work on yourself. Keep doing that work, because it's not without value, and it shows up. That's when that work shows up, is when times get really hard, times get really challenging, when the unexpected happens, and then you've got to figure out, all right, who am I in this situation? And then hopefully the answer will surprise you in a good way, but yeah, that's the thing I would encourage people to do, is keep doing that personal work. Keep cultivating that self-awareness, that, and keep working on those edges in our personality, those things that we need to improve on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'd like to just before we close, circle back and ask
Sure.
you about your friends. So
Yeah. Oh,
when
yeah.
I was on your podcast, right at that time, friends of yours had a serious contingency planning type emergency,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to check in with you and see how everyone is doing.
Actually, in terms of the health of that individual, they are a walking miracle. When I had first reported on that particular incident, the guy was in the hospital, laid up, everything was broken. Just we were not sure if he was actually going to make it. I'm actually very pleased to report we spent New Year's Eve with their family. Our families are very close,
That's
and
awesome.
and the guy walked into my house with a limp, but without any crutches. And he was in, like, regular shoes, and like, the guy's a walking miracle. And he's not without. I mean, he went through something significant. For your listeners who don't know, I had a friend who got hit on his bike at 60 plus miles an hour by a young driver, and like, he shouldn't have lived, and yet he's alive, he's thriving, he's back at work. He's limping, but I mean, he is really an answer to divine providence and prayer, and he's a walking miracle. So
Oh, I'm
he's
so glad to
doing
hear
very well.
that. Yeah.
And
What great
yeah,
news.
yeah, it is. It is, and we need more good news these days. So
For
it's
sure. And that's been months in the making. So that's
yes,
such a great update. So happy for
absolutely,
them, for the whole
absolutely.
family. Yeah. So, Mark, thank you for all of your insights and your tips. I feel like anyone who might be on the verge of needing to make a job change or feeling like they will be made redundant, because things are always in flux. I feel like you shared a lot of great tips with us on how to prepare for that and how to show up more powerfully in that situation. How can the viewers and listeners connect with you if they would like to get to know you better?
I am extremely easy to find. Actually, I'm all over social media: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. My content platforms are YouTube and iTunes, um, and Twitter as well. So I'm very easy to find. Just Google Botros or the LifeWorks podcast, you'll find me. So I'm very, very easy to connect with. LinkedIn is a very easy way to connect with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, but also active on the other platforms as well. But LinkedIn for this audience is a very easy way to connect with me. And my door is open. So if anyone has any questions, follow-ups, or anything like that, more than happy to take those offline.
All right, that's awesome. And I'll put some of your links in the comments so that people can easily access your information. So thank you so much, Mark. It was great to talk with you. Happy New Year. And I'm so excited about what's to come for you in 2022.
Happy New Year to you too, Mary Beth. Thank you so much for the honor of having me on today.
My pleasure.